Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Garrison McDaniel, and we have a great show for you guys today. We're going to be diving right into the action, talking about the Edmonton Oilers, of course, this entire week dedicated to the Stanley Cup Finals. That will be starting on Saturday. So, to continue that theme, we're going to be starting our first segment talking about the Oilers, their history in the Stanley Cup Finals, how many times they've been there, and how many times that they have won. The Panthers not having too much of a history. I didn't dive too deep into it, but we will talk about it a little bit in that segment as well. Our second segment will be me talking about the regular season matchup between these two teams, who it favored, and who really stood out in all those matchups. Third segment will be me discussing the legend of Joe Pavelski, who has announced his retirement. One of the oldest players in the league is now hanging up the skates. It's always sad whenever somebody retires, but we always take a look back on the careers of the legends that do retire, and he definitely fits that bill. And stick around in the show for our fourth segment, talking about the furthest Stanley Cup Finals in history between two teams, how that can affect the teams, and what kind of storylines we can grab from that. And then in the fifth and final segment of the night, we'll wrap things up by talking about the special teams units for each team and how could be a very big key for the Stanley Cup Finals. But as always, before we get into any of that, guys, I would love to remind you that if you want to become a part of the show, be of bigger support than you guys already are, of course, use the GSMCpodcast.net tips and donations link. If you want to ask me any questions, it'll show up across the screen as well if you use that link. So, if you guys want to support the show more than you guys already do, that is the best way to do it. But without further ado, we're going to get right into our first segment of the night, talking about Edmonton's history in the Stanley Cup Finals. A little bit of a deep dive into that. The Edmonton Oilers have a rich history. They've been a team for a very long time and have had, the best player of all time. They've also had a few of the Hall of Fame legends of the sport on their team at the same time as well. So they had a dynasty in the 80s. Of course they had a dynasty in the 80s, and that's what we're talking about here. In the 80s, you have Wayne Gretzky, you have Jari Kurri, you have Mark Messier. Of course, all of these players go so far into helping you win a Stanley Cup, and all of them did. They became a dynasty during the Gretzky years. He was, of course, on fire, scoring at will, assisting at will. He leads the entire NHL in points all time by a significant margin. All of his stats are ridiculous. It's because, one, his team, and two, because he was absolutely ridiculous as a player. But going into their kind of runs in the 80s and in their dynasty years, 83, they went to so these were the years that they went to the Cup Final. 83, 1984, 1985, 1987, 1988, 1990, 2006, and of course this year in 2024 will make it 8th time. In those appearances, this is how they shaped up. In their first ever appearance I almost said 1883 again. In 1983, they were swept by the New York Islanders, as the New York Islanders were the other team kind of going off at this time, of course, with their four-peat. This was the final of the New York Islanders four-peat. And then in 1984, they beat the New York Islanders in 5. In 1985, they won their second cup, beating the Broad Street Bully Flyers in 5. In 1987, they beat the Flyers again, this time in 7. That was a grueling series for them, but a very impressive one nonetheless. In 1988, they swept the Boston Bruins. In 1990, they beat the Bruins again in 5. The theme with the Oilers and their early years and their cup years, they love to play the same team. Islanders, Flyers, Bruins. Those were the teams that they faced in those cup runs or in those cup finals. I think that that's pretty funny. They faced the Canes in 2006, and then in 2024. Now, of course, they're facing the Panthers. They lost to the Canes in 7 once again. So they played 2 sevens, 2 of them went to 7 games, 3 of them went to 5, and then 2 of them were sweeps. They swept one team, got swept by another team, and lost a series in 7. So they're 5-2 overall in Stanley Cup Finals up to this point, with 5 cups, of course. Very impressive record. 5-2. That means that it's very difficult. I would not be betting on this series to go to 6 at any for either teams. I think the odds on. I think the favorite for the series outlook is Panthers in 7, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a good bet. Or everywhere else besides 6, because the Oilers have not played only 6 games or just 6 games in a cup final in their history, and they have a rich history. So yeah, they won it in 1984, 1985, 1987, 1988, 1990. 1990 was the last Stanley Cup that the Edmonton Oilers won. They won that one without Wayne Gretzky. Of course, everybody knows the infamous D trade that happened in 1988, but that happened in the fall of 1988, and Wayne Gretzky won his 4th and final cup with the Edmonton Oilers in the summer/spring of 1988. So after they won 4 cups, they deal with the best player of all time, and at that point, he was probably the best player of all time. Maybe it was Gordie Howe or Bobby Orr up to that point, but he was absolutely insane. And then they deal him to the LA Kings, and then they win one in 1990. So it proved to be the right decision at the time, winning the cup. Now we look back on it as probably the worst trade in sports history, but that's how trades are in sports. So 1990 was the only time that they've ever won a Stanley Cup without Wayne Gretzky. They still had Mark Messier on their team, They still had Jari Kurri on that team. That dynasty team had so many legends, it's hard to keep track of. But now it's kind of what we're seeing with Connor McDavid, and this is kind of why I want to bring up the history of the Edmonton Oilers. Is very. Connor McDavid has always reminded me of Wayne Gretzky, and in every single aspect of his game, it reminds me of Wayne Gretzky. He is the only player that's ever played in an Edmonton Oilers jersey that does the same things on a hockey or on a hockey ice as Wayne Gretzky could. He's so good. Is he able to cement his name in the history books of the Edmonton Oilers? Wayne Gretzky, of course, is the name that you think about when you're thinking of the Edmonton Oilers. Next is Jari Kurri, because of what he was able to do right next to Wayne Gretzky on his wing. Then you think of Mark Messier, because he captained them to a Stanley Cup in 1990. You more or less think of Mark Messier as a New York Ranger nowadays, but he, of course, won them the Stanley Cup in 1990, helped them win their 4 cups from 84 to 88 before Wayne Gretzky left. So, of course, Wayne Gretzky had his help, and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, I think they rival that of the Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier. Maybe you could toss on you wouldn't compare Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at all to Jari Kurri, but if you want for the sake of comparisons, of course you could. Left winger for Connor McDavid gets a lot of points because he's on the wing for him. It was Zach Hyman this year, but of course players have been on Connor McDavid's wing that have produced very well, above what you would expect them to. Maybe Jari Kurri might not fit that mold. Maybe you expect him to be such a great player in his own right because he was such a great player in his own right. So for Connor McDavid, he has that supporting cast now, and I think he needs to win this cup because of he went to the worst franchise that he possibly could have. He has to always have that name Wayne Gretzky attached to him. If he didn't get drafted by the Edmonton Oilers, there's 0% chance that we had these talks. I think we compare him more to. I think I would honestly compare Connor McDavid more to Mario Lemieux in his style of play than I would Wayne Gretzky, but he wears the same jersey as Gretzky, so of course you're talking about those two players in the same mold always. And for Connor McDavid, that's such a heavy weight to hold on your shoulders. I mean, this is the greatest player in hockey history, not even close. So to have that name and that weight on your shoulders, it's hard. It's so hard for Connor McDavid. So to win a Stanley Cup this year in 2024, and his only chance that he's really had to win a Stanley Cup, will go such a long way, and it will be huge for his legacy and his career. He he of course has not done enough to get his jersey retired, but if he continues on the same trajectory, I think he eventually does get his jersey retired for the Oilers organization, even without winning a Stanley Cup. He's already the second highest assist total in Edmonton Oilers history. He's the fourth highest point total in Edmonton Oilers history. I think fourth highest goal total in the Edmonton Oilers history. And these records are shared by Gretzky, Messier, and Curry. So we're putting his name already up there with that big three of the Edmonton Oilers of the past. But without a cup, I can't help but feel like his career could be a waste. He's the most talented hockey player I've ever seen with my own two eyes. By far the most talented hockey player I've ever seen with my own two eyes. And I think when you're playing for an organization like the Edmonton Oilers, such a rich in history organization, they've won the cup 5 times. And they've won it without Gretzky. So it's not even like you can use that excuse, well, only Gretzky can win in Edmonton. They've won it 5 times. They've won it without Gretzky, with Curry and Mark Messier. So for Connor McDavid to be able to add his name to that list of, well, you only have 1 cup without Gretzky, now you have 2. One of it being Messier and Curry, the other one being Draisaitl and McDavid, I think would go huge for his legacy. And right now, the Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy to win in sports by far. It wasn't like that so much in the 80s. In the 80s, you had the Oilers, the Islanders, the Flyers, the Bruins, the Penguins were pretty competitive. The Canadians were having down years in the 80s. You had in the West, it was really the Oilers, the Kings when they got Gretzky, that was pretty much it in the West. And then in the East, you had, of course, the Boston Bully Flyers. You had the 4-peat Islanders. You had the Bruins, who were really good in this time. You had the Rangers, who have always been very good. So in the 80s, it was a little bit easier to win in the West. And nowadays, you have, and I went through this when I talked about it after the conference finals. Now you have the Oilers, the Avalanche, the Stars, the Canucks, the Jets when we were going into the postseason, the Vegas Golden Knights. 6 out of 8 teams in the Western Conference could have gone to the Stanley Cup from the West. That is, it's so hard to that was a gauntlet. They had to go through the Kings, who was one of 2 teams that I really didn't think that could make it to the Cup final, and the Kings were pretty good in the regular season. The Kings, then they had to play the Vancouver Canucks, who was the second best team in the Western Conference. They were fantastic all the regular season. They were looking like they could have won the President's Trophy at some points in the regular season, and then they beat them in 7. And then you're playing the Dallas Stars, who have already gone to the Cup in the 2020s. In 2020, they went to the Stanley Cup. You are facing them with an even better team than they came in 2020. Jake Ottinger being a huge addition for them. Miro Heiskanen being so much better than he was in 2020. Of course, you have Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, these players playing so well. You have Joe Pavelski, who just retired, and we'll talk about how huge of a player that is no matter what team he's played for. So in the West, it was so hard for the Oilers nowadays. So I think 1 cup could definitely rival that 1990 Cup for the Edmonton Oilers. I think that's a very interesting conversation that I would want to get into in the event that the Edmonton Oilers do win this Cup, but I think I'll hold that off for if they do win the Cup. But that'll wrap it up for our first segment, talking about a little bit of the history of the Edmonton Oilers and how they have done in Stanley Cup Finals of the past. When I come back, we'll be talking about the regular season matchup between these 2 teams and what that could say, or what that could spell out for the Stanley Cup Final.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I
wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're going to get right into our second segment of the night, talking about the regular season matchup between these two Stanley Cup Finals teams. They first played. We're going to get right into this. Actually, before we get into this, I would love to remind you guys that if you would like to use the tips and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net, it would go a long way into supporting the creators here in the GSMC Sports Network. Anything really helps us, and thank you for all of your guys' support no matter what. And we're going to get right into this second segment talking about the regular season matchup between these two teams. In the first game that they played two of this regular season. In the first game, it was November 20th, 2023. The Edmonton Oilers were in a very big rough patch around this November time. Of course, they fired their head coach midway through the season, so impressive how far they have come. But in this matchup, it was the Panthers to take, and they absolutely took advantage of that. 5-3, this went to the Florida Panthers. Connor McDavid, of course, had such a fantastic season. Of course, he gets 2 goals in this game. Not enough. It was really the lack of depth when it started out this season for the Edmonton Oilers, and we're seeing it a little bit come back in the postseason. But Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl have just been so out of this world, crazy good that it hasn't really affected the Oilers. I'm interested to see if that'll come back and rear its ugly little head back in. It's absolutely possible. The Edmonton Oilers are not. And this is going into this series a little bit more. I don't think the Edmonton Oilers had the 4 lines deep that the Florida Panthers do. So I think the Florida Panthers absolutely can make advantage of that. And that's what I kind of saw looking back at these games. Of course, I rewatched them in anticipation for the Stanley Cup Final here. The first one, November 20th, 2023, 5-3 the Panthers, McDavid with 2 goals. Calvin Pickard was in net for the Edmonton Oilers. 28 saves, 875 save percentage. Not a good night for the goaltender. But we don't expect to see him in net. We don't expect to see Calvin Pickard in the net for the Edmonton Oilers in this series. We expect to see Stuart Skinner playing goaltender for them for probably all games that are played here. They went to Stuart Skinner in the entire Dallas series, and it worked out pretty well for them. He's been playing fantastic hockey as of late, been a great goaltender in front of that net, been a brick wall in the last 2 games that those 2 teams have played. So for the Edmonton Oilers, I wouldn't buy into this result too much. It was Mikkola with 2 goals. The defenseman had a very good game in this one. Kevin Stenlund, the third-line center for the Florida Panthers, playing fourth-line center right now, I believe. I do have their line combinations up right now. He is on their fourth-line center, as Anton Lundell has been playing third-line center for them. So for the team, for the Panthers, they outplayed the depth in this one. Mikkola, a depth defenseman, he's on the middle pairing of the D. Kevin Stenlund, fourth line forward. It was Sam Bennett and Carter Verhaeghe also got a goal each in this game. And then Sergei Bobrovsky was pretty good, but not great in this game. 26 saves on 29 shots against, 8.96 save percentage. But this wasn't the game that Bobrovsky really dominated against the Oilers. The second game was. December 16th, 2023, this was Bobrovsky's game, and he absolutely stole it. 3 points by Bennett. It was a goal and 2 assists by him. Carter Verhaeghe, opposite kind of stat line, 2 goals and 1 assist. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, 2 assists. Brandon Montour, goal and an assist. And Sergei Bobrovsky, 1 goal against on 38 saves from 39 shots attempt. The Panthers won 5-1 in this game, and it was a complete domination all across the ice. Bobrovsky, of course, stopping 38 shots on 39 against is so impressive. And, I mean, having that in your back, that's kind of what helps their forwards out a lot. So it was impressive what Bobrovsky was able to do in this game. And he's going to need to be doing that all series long, and he's been doing that all playoffs long. I think if I were to give a Conn Smythe trophy to a team or to a player on the Florida Panthers, it would be Sergei Bobrovsky right now. He has been lights out in this postseason. I would take some thought or some consideration with Matthew Tkachuk, maybe a Sam Reinhart, Sam Bennett could maybe get some votes or some thought to him, but I think right now you gotta give it to Sergei Bobrovsky. What a fantastic playoff run he's on. And he's got to outplay Stuart Skinner. I think that, we talk about that being one of my keys to the series. And I think for good reason. Bobrovsky needs to outplay Stuart Skinner if they want to win the series, because he is going up against the best forward group or the best forward in the world, the second best forward in the world. So you're going up against those two guys. You need to be on your A game as a goaltender. So we'll see what he was able to do. He gave up 2 goals to Connor McDavid in their first go around, and in the second game, stopping so many shots, only giving up 1 assist to Connor McDavid. It was Zach Hyman with the goal for the Edmonton Oilers. It was Zach Hyman with the goal for the Edmonton Oilers in that matchup on December 16th. But these teams haven't played each other since the Edmonton Oilers got really good. The Edmonton Oilers were still flirting with 500 during this game. I believe at the time this game was played, they were 14-13-1, if I'm not mistaken. So for the Oilers, they've come a long way. They finished this season well above 500. They won a lot of games down the stretch and really found their identity down the stretch. It was Zach Hyman absolutely finding his identity down the stretch as well. So for the Edmonton Oilers, I wouldn't buy into these 2 results too much. You kind of saw this with the Florida Panthers against the Boston Bruins in their second round matchup. The Florida Panthers got swept in the series, in the season series against the Boston Bruins, but they absolutely dominated them in the second round, winning in 6 in that series. It was probably the one series that the Florida Panthers looked like they were at risk of losing this entire postseason. Maybe you could say that Rangers series, although it never really seemed like they were at risk of losing that one. Maybe it was when they went down 2-1, but they were able to win 3 games in a row and take that series. So very impressive from the Florida Panthers, what they've been able to do all postseason, and they got to continue that. In the season series, what I really noticed was Bobrovsky, when he is saving shots, their offense finds another gear. That team really thrives off of the goaltender. And then their bottom 6 really played better than the Oilers' bottom 6. The Panthers' bottom 6 is absolutely better than the Oilers' bottom 6. And on Friday, we'll talk about the line combinations and who it favors. But just talking about the bottom 6 solely, it definitely goes to the Florida Panthers. You have Matthias Janmark, Adam Henry, Connor Brown. Matthias Janmark, Adam Henry, Connor Brown, Ryan McLeod, Derek Ryan, and Corey Perry are the bottom 6 for the Edmonton Oilers. And when it comes to the Florida Panthers, you have Eetu Luos. I've never known how to pronounce his name. Eetu Luostarinen, Anton Lundell, Vladimir Tarasenko, Ryan Lundberg, Kevin Stenlund, and Kyle Okposo. I really like the Florida Panthers' bottom 6. Vladimir Tarasenko being on your third line says a lot about this team. Kyle Okposo being on the fourth line says a lot about this team. Kevin Stenlund being on the fourth line, that's a really great fourth line, gritty guy. Of course, I've been close to him as he was a Columbus Blue Jackets draft pick forward. So I've known of him for a very long time. He's been close to that organization as I've, from Columbus, followed that organization very closely. For the Florida Panthers, that's the matchup that they need to win. It's also OEL and Dmitry Kulikov on that third line defensive pairing. Oliver Ekman-Larsson got 2 points in this game. When their depth, when the Florida Panthers' depth is playing at the level that everybody knows that they can play at, they win games. They've been fantastic in this entire postseason run, and they've won games because of it. So that's the matchup I'm looking at most. based off of these, based off of the regular season results. So I'm very intrigued to see what that's going to look like. I think the Oilers are going to shorten their bench a lot. Connor McDavid might play 26 minutes a night in this series. Leon Draisaitl might play 22 minutes a night in this series. So I'm so fascinated with how the Oilers coach is going to kind of roll out the lines. But that's something we'll find out on Saturday. So that'll wrap it up for our second segment of the night, talking about the regular season between the Edmonton Oilers and Florida Panthers. When I come back, we'll be talking about a legend of hockey retired just the other day, talk about what his career meant and what legacy he's leaving behind.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're talking Joe Pavelski's retirement and what it meant for the sport. This guy, very, very legendary career, has been playing in the league since 2006, playing over 1,332 games in the NHL. Eclipsing that 1,000 mark is a huge feat for anybody in the NHL. Joined the league when he was 22 years old in San Jose. Played in San Jose until he eventually got traded to the Dallas Stars. Or did he sign with the Dallas Stars? I think he might have signed with the Dallas Stars in that 2017 offseason and has been with them ever since. Legendary career, as I've said, for Joe Pavelski. Playing in this league for 18 years is such a huge accomplishment. He was unable to get to 19, but playing through his age 39 season is so impressive for Joe Pavelski. Accumulated 476 goals in the NHL, over 1,000 points in the NHL. That will be a trivia question. 1,000 point scorers in the NHL. There have been about 70 of them. He adds his name to the list. But he wasn't known for his scoring. He was never one of those top line guys. During his prime in San Jose, it was Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, and then Joe Pavelski were all very prominent for that San Jose team. He's a two-time Cup finalist, has never won the Stanley Cup. Unfortunately, couldn't get it done this year as the Dallas Stars got so close to still playing hockey in June here. Unfortunate for Joe Pavelski. Does add his name to maybe the best, or a list of the best players of all time to have to whom have never won the Stanley Cup. For Joe Pavelski, that is very sad, but as I said, he wasn't always known for his scoring, but what he was known for was playing both sides of the ice. He was a Selke candidate almost always in his career, starting from his age 23, his second year in the league, all the way up until his second to last year in the league in 2023. He received votes for the Selke. In 2008, he was 65th in voting. In 2009, 20th. 2010, 23rd, 11, 24th, 2012, he was 11th, 2013, 45th, 15, 8th, 16, 18th, 17, 11, 16, 11, 17, 32, 18, 22nd. Didn't get the nod in his age 34 and age 35 season, but 36 season, he received his highest voting for the Selke at 7th. When he was 36 years old, playing both ends of the ice. That was that COVID shortened year. He was amazing that COVID shortened year at 51 points in 56 games played. And then received votes for the Selke in 2022 and 2023. Until this year, he has been a perennial Selke candidate. Absolutely deserving of the award, but he has played in the time of Brad Marchand. Alexander Barkov has also won the award a fair few times. So, unfortunate for him, has never been able to claim any award. When you're looking at his accolades, the stat sheet is, it's zero. He has 2 All-Star appearances in his career, I believe, if I can see that correctly. But, it doesn't matter. You know of him as a legend of the sport. You don't play for 17 years in the NHL without being that guy, right? So not finishing really any higher in the All-Star vote. He was second in the All-Star voting in 2014. That was his Hart year. He didn't win the Hart. He came 7th in the voting of that season. But he definitely was amazing in that year. That was his year. He was 79 points in 82 games, 41 goals, however. He was more of a goal scorer, of course, than he was assisting. He has more assists in his career, but with his record, 41 goals being the highlight of his career in that 2014 season. That's a lot of goals. That's very impressive. Nowadays, everybody knows him for his tip-in shots. He kind of led way to this new revolution of players tipping in shots and how impressive that can be. For Joe Pavelski, 41 goals in 2014, 38 in 2016, 38 in 2019, 37 in 2015. Always playing very well. In the shortened season, in his lowest season of a full year was his rookie season. He played 46 games in that full 2007 season. However, in 2013, that was a shortened year, and in 2020, that was a shortened year. So, without his rookie season or the 2 shortened years in his career, he played in 67 games. This is his lowest in 2010 of his career. Always out there on the ice, that you don't get to 100 games played without playing in a lot of almost every season. So, very impressive career from Joe Pavelski. Always putting up numbers. A very fun guy to have around. Very great guy. When he retired, there's been reports of that locker room being a little bit off. He brings a culture to anywhere he goes. He was the captain of the San Jose Sharks when they went to the Stanley Cup in 2017 against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Sorry, I was watching Paul Skeens a little bit earlier. That guy's fun to watch. But for the Penguins, they beat the San Jose Sharks in that year, and then he plays for the Dallas Stars. They drop in 2020 against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and those were Joe Pavelski's 2 chances at winning a Stanley Cup. Unable to get it done. Always a great locker room guy, captain of the Sharks, assistant captain when he was on the Stars, veteran leader when he got to the Stars. So, for Joe Pavelski, a heartfelt goodbye to the sport. Fantastic player. In NHL. In the NHL video games, he was always a very high-rated guy. That's kind of what I remember him as. His highest rating being in NHL 17, being a 91 overall. He was great in that game. But he just had such a fantastic career, Joe Pavelski did. So he will be missed in the sport of hockey. He brought a lot of fun to the game. Always probably one of the hardest workers of this generation. There's always clips of him being out on the ice working on that tip-in shot. He's always the first guy kind of on the ice in practice wherever he's going. So one of those guys that you love to have on your team, and the Dallas Stars will surely miss him next year. Although his production definitely did drop this season, having 67 points in 82 games played. Still a very prominent forward for the Dallas Stars, playing on that third line. I think he was on most of this year, playing with, I think the third line was someone like Joe Pavelski, Matt Duchene, and Mason Marchment. for the Dallas Stars, if I can remember correctly. They're already out of the playoffs, and I've already forgot about their line combinations, although I was looking at it just the other day. But for the Dallas Stars, he will definitely be missed. A known playoff performer as well. His playoff stats are very impressive, making the playoffs in a lot of seasons in his career. He made the playoffs in 2007. Did he? He missed. These are the years he missed the playoffs. I think that'll be easier. He missed the playoffs in the 2014-2015 season. He missed the playoffs in the 2021 season. And that's it. He missed the playoffs 2 times in his entire career. That's so impressive. I'm just now looking at his playoff stats. But as I mentioned, always a playoff performer. In that year that they went to the Cup in 2016 against the Pittsburgh Penguins, 23 points in 24 games played. Sorry, I meant to say 2016 earlier, by the way. Let me correct myself right now. 23 points in 24 games. And the other year that they went to the Cup, 19 points in 27 games, but had 13 goals. I believe he also led the entire league with 14 goals in the 2016 Cup run. And this year, only 4 points. It has been a very disappointing playoff finish for him in his career. But he's done the job. He's been a fantastic playoff performer his entire career, only missing out 2 years. Perennial winner is Joe Pavelski, let me tell you. Very impressive career. He definitely will be missed in the world of hockey. Congratulations to a fantastic career, Joe Pavelski. You're not ever going to see this, but by the odd chance that you search your name on Google and this comes up, congratulations on a fantastic career. What a guy to remember in the NHL world. Of course, this probably definitely won't be the last big retirement that we see in the NHL this year. But we'll wait until more in the offseason to compile more of these retirement stories. As Corey Perry's getting up there in age, he might end after this Oilers Cup run. That's probably the next biggest name that I'm looking out for. Brent Burns maybe, although he's making a lot of money, so I don't know why he would go anywhere. But anyways, that'll wrap it up for our third segment of the night, talking about Joe Pavelski. When I come back, we will be talking about this Stanley Cup Finals and how it is the furthest in Stanley Cup Finals history.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're going to get right into our fourth segment of the night, talking about how this is the furthest distance between two teams in the Stanley Cup Finals history. Of course, during the original 6 era, teams weren't that far west, as it was just Boston, New York, Detroit, Chicago, Toronto, and Montreal. All of those teams, besides Chicago is the only team of those original 6 that aren't in Eastern time zone. So not a lot of travel in the original 6 era. That opened up the door to big travel when you got into expansion. During the pre-original 6 era, Victoria versus Montreal was the longest distance. They played in 1924, 1925, and 1925-1926 seasons in the Stanley Cup Finals, but that goes before the original 6 era, so we don't really count it in the NHL conversations and records. But when it went into expansion, we saw the Vancouver Canucks become a team, and that's when we opened the door to very, very far teams playing very much or a lot of travel during the Stanley Cup Finals. And in those series, it was the New York Islanders versus the Vancouver Canucks in 81 and 82, and the New York Rangers versus the Vancouver Canucks in 93 and 94. The Islanders won that series against the Canucks, and the Rangers won that series against the Canucks. The Canucks suck in the Stanley Cup Final. And in the furthest ever Stanley Cup Final before the Oilers-Panthers, it was the Canucks versus the Bruins. The Canucks lost that one again. But a lot of travel this year and a lot of travel in that 2010-2011 series. I took a look into that 2011 or 2010-2011 series and saw what I could take away from that. The home team won every game besides Game 7, where the Vancouver Canucks fell to the Boston Bruins in that Game 7. Boston Bruins won the 2011 Cup. We know this. And it was a huge thing in Vancouver that they lost another Stanley Cup, being so close, losing it once again. That the Cup has always eluded the Vancouver Canucks, who have always had a pretty good team, never been able to win the big one, though. For the Vancouver Canucks, they make up three names of this list, and then Los Angeles is basically the other one. You have the second, or now the third largest distance between two teams was the Canadiens versus the Kings, 1992-1993. That was the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. That was Montreal that won that cup against the Los Angeles Kings. 2013-2014, that was a very far one. New York Rangers to the Los Angeles Kings. If you ever wondered the distance between New York and Los Angeles, it is 2,447 miles. Fun fact. And then the New Jersey Devils versus the Los Angeles Kings. That was 2011-2012. A lot of this, luckily for the teams of the 80s and 90s, a lot of these far matchups are in the 2010s, where travel is a lot better in the NHL. Imagine doing this when they're riding their buses in the 60s or 70s, or their horrid planes that they had in the late 90s or in the 90s with the revolution of hockey with the high scoring. So that would be awful. A lot of these series, besides the 92-93 series between the Canadiens and the Kings, were really in the 21st century. But the the Canucks really get screwed out by being they're the furthest West Coast team, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure they're the furthest Western team. That's tough for them. I know they're the westernmost point that you can really get in Canada while still being in habitable land. So for the Vancouver Canucks, it is very unfortunate for them. But somehow this is kind of why I want to talk about this. This is the main point of this conversation. How is Edmonton, Florida further than Vancouver, Boston? I guess, you're considering North and South, of course, in this. But I still, Edmonton, of course, and Alberta, Canada is the second most western province, but still, it's not as far as BC is, British Columbia. For those of you that don't know, that is the furthest west province. That is the province that Vancouver is inside of. It is just west of Alberta. But the Oilers are very far north. I think they're the northernmost NHL team, if I'm not mistaken. I believe they're more northern than the Winnipeg Jets. But for the Edmonton Oilers, playing against the Florida Panthers, it's more about that north and south trip. The Florida Panthers in Sunrise, Florida, pretty much Miami, Florida, very, very far south. And, of course, very, very far east. So there are a total of 2,541 miles between the two teams, making that the furthest distance traveled for a Stanley Cup between two teams. Luckily, for this cup, there are built-in travel days in between each time the teams have to travel. It's going to be 2 days instead of the 1 day break in between games. So that'll help out these teams a lot. It'll give me more to talk about as well, so I do appreciate that. But that does build into the schedule being a little bit cramped. That is why that we only have a couple of days instead of a week between the Stanley Cup Final and the NHL Draft. Once again, great for me. More content to talk about. I don't know what I'm going to be talking about the draft picks, though. I want to give you guys my top 10, or I want to give probably a first round mock draft in one of these episodes. But, I mean, I have to talk about the Stanley Cup Final. That's what's in front of me. So, because of these travel days, you push back the Stanley Cup Final pretty much as you possibly can. And then you push it right to the edge of the NHL draft. So, it'll be very difficult for these teams, of course. They're traveling. It is about a 5.5 to 6 hour flight between the two destinations. Also taking into account the time difference, I believe Edmonton is in. They're either in Mountain Time or in Pacific Time. I don't know. I actually am intrigued because now you're thinking when you're going to Florida from Edmonton. I gotta figure this out now. They're in Mountain Time Zone. Okay, so it's not as horrible because if you're going from Pacific Time Zone to Edmonton, or Pacific Time Zone to all the way to Eastern, that would suck. But you're going from Mountain Time Zone, which is 2 hours, 2 hours behind. Yeah, I'm trying to think. 2 hours, yes, behind Eastern Time Zone. So when you're going from Edmonton to Florida, let's say you leave at 9 in the morning during a travel day. Leave at 9 in the morning from Edmonton. That is already about a 6 hour flight, non-stop flight if you get it non-stop. So from 6 hours, that takes you to 3. With the 2 hour time difference, it's 5 o'clock in Florida. Pretty much you're losing 8 hours on that plane ride. So that's gonna suck for these guys going from Edmonton back to Florida if there were to be a Game 5 and for a Game 7. That would take a little bit to get used to for these guys, but that's why they're professionals. That's why they get paid the big bucks. They're used to jet lag. Of course, they travel so much during the regular season. The divisions try to manage that as much as possible, but for these teams, they're used to this travel. It's gonna be interesting to see who gets the advantage from this. I would imagine it would have to be the Edmonton Oilers would get the advantage from this. They probably travel one of the most out of any of these teams, being such a northern and such a western team. Imagine just playing in your own division. You're going across the time zone for 5 out of 8 of those teams. I think Arizona is in Mountain Time, or Utah now. Utah is in Mountain Time. I know that for a fact. So get me to be right, but Edmonton probably is used to this. The Florida Panthers, however, are going in the Atlantic. I don't think there's a single team in the Atlantic off the top of my head that would be in Central Time Zone. So when you're playing a division game, they're staying in the same time zone no matter what. And then, is there a team in the Eastern Conference that's outside of Eastern Time Zone? In the Central Time Zone, I know Chicago is, but they're in the West. I live in Chicago. That's the only reason I know that one. So the switching time zones and travel is very difficult. It affects you a lot, especially a 2 or more hour time difference. So it's going to be difficult for these guys. Again, they're the professionals. That's why they get paid the big bucks to do stuff like that. But I couldn't imagine it. 6 hour flight, and you imagine they're going to take that. And at least for the Oilers, they're going to need to take that. Hopefully for them 5 times. So we'll see how that affects these guys. It affected, I really do think it affected the 2011 Stanley Cup Final between the Vancouver Canucks and Boston Bruins so much. The home team won every game besides that Game 7. The Bruins were able to break through that and win the series in that Game 7. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. So many storylines in the Stanley Cup Finals. We're covering them all this week on the GSMC Hockey Podcast. So we're going to go through all of them one by one. And our 5th segment, when I get back from our 4th break, we'll be talking about another storyline, the special teams matchup between these two teams. Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're getting right into our fifth and final segment of the night, talking about the special teams matchup and how much of a key factor that is going to play into the Stanley Cup Finals as it is approaching Saturday. June 8th is when the puck drop will be for the first game of the series. I'm so excited for it. We're talking about it all week on the GSMC Hockey Podcast about what this series is going to look like, and what right now all we can do is predict a little bit and do some previews for it. So that's exactly what we've been doing. The special teams. This is what I want to talk about here in our fifth and final segment, in which I believe could probably be the most important matchup in this Stanley Cup Final. We're looking at the top two penalty killing units in playoffs. Or I still have the segment 4 up there. Segment 5. There we go. Special teams is power play and penalty kill, basically. On the power play, the Oilers have been lights out. They are the number 1 power play team in the NHL of this postseason. They're the number 4 power play team in the regular season. And for the Florida Panthers, they're the number 6 power play team, about middle of the road in this postseason here. 23.3%, as opposed to the Oilers' 37.3%. And when it comes to the penalty kill, just the numbers that we're talking about here, the Oilers are at a 93.9% penalty kill percentage, and the Florida Panthers are an 88.2%. Teams aren't scoring on the power play against the Oilers. I can't explain that, because when you're looking at the Oilers' penalty killing lines, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Ryan McLeod, Matthias Ekholm, and Cody Ceci. First off, there's 3 forwards on that line of the first penalty kill, with Cody Ceci, who isn't the best defenseman in his own right. And then on the second penalty killing unit, you have Matthias Janmark, Connor Brown, Brett Kulak, with Darnell Nurse as the solo defenseman on that line. What they like doing is using these 3 forwards with the 1 defenseman and playing a little bit like a reverse umbrella. So the typical penalty kill setup has been in the NHL for so long is kind of that box setup where you worry about kind of your zones on the ice, with your 2 forwards playing up top, kind of playing the point. Of course, power plays have been playing like I wish I could draw this out on a whiteboard to explain this, but power plays kind of play this umbrella where it's shooter, quarterback is what we call it, of the power play up top. They are the one distributing to everybody. And then down low, you have a guy playing kind of Gretzky's office behind the net. And then you have a guy right on net playing the goaltender, screening and everything. So what that looks like against box is basically forward here takes away shooter lane from the quarterback. Forward on the other side takes away shooter lane from the quarterback and helps down low with the screen here. Defenseman usually pushing away down low and blocking shots from the shooter on the side here, and defenseman on the other side blocking shots from the shooter and taking away the screen as much as possible as well. That's been kind of typical power play versus penalty kill. The Oilers have been liking to do is kind of mirror that umbrella a little bit, where 3 forwards kind of, you have a forward playing that quarterback a little bit more man-to-man type, with these 2 forwards out just purely on the shooters, not playing the lane. That opens up the middle of the ice a lot more, and what we have seen teams try to do against the Oilers, what I saw with the Vancouver Canucks and what I saw with the Dallas Stars, is what they would do is pass the puck down low, have a shooter get into the slot because you're playing this 3 up high, and then they would take from down low into the slot and take a shot on net. That works in theory, but you're still having that forward on man, so they take that man, they go into the slot with that man, and now you're just kind of outnumbered in the slot because you already have a defenseman kind of on the screener helping down low as well, and that forward that is playing the shooter man on the left wing dash that now is coming into the slot is being stopped because he is on man-to-man. So the Oilers their penalty kill has looked crazy good, and with this 3 forward look, that's kind of what they're going with. Of course, their second line isn't the 3 forwards. It's really what they have been doing when they're caught out a little bit. Let me tell you, Cody Ceci, Matthias Ekholm, and Brett Kulak are some of the most penalized players on this team, so they're usually not out on the ice. So it's been a little bit of Adam Henrique playing that third forward. Connor Brown's already on that. Derek Ryan has been playing a little bit. Evander Kane has gotten some time on the penalty kill as well for the Edmonton Oilers. So what they have been able to do, kind of playing a reverse of that umbrella, has been very impressive, and playing more man on shooters have been great for the Edmonton Oilers, and it's working very well. On the other side for the Florida Panthers, what they have been doing is playing a very box look, but what's interesting about their penalty killing units is what we're typically seeing is 2 forwards, 2 defensemen as usual, with the they're playing a lot more natural like box here, but they're switching up their pairing a little bit. They have Mikola and Kulikov on their first penalty killing unit, both very big guys here. Dmitry Kulikov playing on their third defensive pairing with Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and Nico Mikola playing on the second pair with Brandon Montour. And then when you get into their second penalty kill unit, that's when you're getting Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad out there. So they're not using their big guys in their first penalty killing unit, instead opting to use it with the second. I think that's to balance out their penalty kill, and I think that's going very well. Because you're having Alexander Barkov and Sam Reinhart on that first PK unit, who are 2 of the better defensive forwards that we have in the league. Alexander Barkov just won the Selke as the best defensive forward in the league. And Sam Reinhart, always very, very great defensively. He has a big body, gets his body in front of the net for the shot. So they're playing that box kind of method, and it's been very impressive. And then when it comes to that second penalty kill unit, Kevin Stenlund, this is why he gets his money in the NHL. He is a very great penalty killer. He has always been a very great penalty killer, and he's out there on that second penalty killing unit. And Eetu Luostarinen is a big body, good left winger that gets out there and is great at killing it as well. The Panthers get a lot of shorthanded goals, and the Edmonton Oilers just kill power plays so efficiently. That's the special teams is going to be something so fun to watch and to look at in this matchup, and that's why. And I haven't even mentioned, this is what's going to make it the most fun. On the first power play unit for the Edmonton Oilers, it is the greatest power play unit in all of hockey. Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, Evan Bouchard. Let me talk about the symphony that they absolutely put on, and try to follow with me here as you guys kind of working on following with me with the penalty kill stuff. For the Edmonton Oilers, I talked about that umbrella on the power play, and they do run a umbrella kind of sort, but they give so much freedom to McDavid and Draisaitl, and it's beautiful because they know exactly what to do with it. Both these players operate so well going around the net and creating speed, looking for a pass when they come back up underneath the around the hash marks. That's really what they have made a living doing. So if McDavid gets the puck, he usually gets the puck from up high. He brings it down low, goes behind the net, and he goes circling around the net. He then gets to look on the other side of the ice. What somebody's doing, it's usually the player playing from where McDavid is going to, basically going around the net. So he's going to go around the net. The player that was originally in that position on that, let's say he goes from the left to the right wing, the player that was playing in that right wing, usually it's Zach Hyman, sometimes it's Leon Draisaitl, will come behind Connor McDavid in his rotation around the net, but stop on that far side, get ready for that cross crease pass, and it's been beautiful, and it's worked out so well. They've gotten so many goals this way. That's one way that they're scoring goals, is just that circle motion, and they're rotating so well, and they get lost, and their sticks get lost. But how big is it? I don't know what you're referring to, Chur, in the chat there. But for the but that another way that they score goals is just Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are 2 of the greatest shooters in the NHL, along with their fantastic playmaking ability. And you see so many times that people or penalty kill units give a lot of space when they're playing Leon Draisaitl, because you're focused so much on the other end of the ice, what Connor McDavid is doing, that he just gets a shot on net. So, is it a sea monster? I don't know what your guys are referring to. But, anyways, when it's with these guys, with Leon Draisaitl, he has such a great shot that if you leave him with enough space, he can just pick out a top corner of the net and he's scoring. So, this Oilers power play has been so fantastic all year long. They were 4th in the NHL in the regular season, and they've dominated in the postseason. They've gotten so many goals, 37% on the power play. Really helped them out in their first series against the LA Kings, scored so many power play goals. They're operating around a 50% on the power play after that series. Who's better, Kevin Durant or Patrick Mahomes? I don't think I can answer that. Those two play very different sports. But that'll wrap it up for the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I thank all of you guys for all of your support. If you would like to like or subscribe to the show, that all of your support would be much appreciated. We also have TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter that you guys can follow at the GSMC Sports Network or GSMC Podcast Network. But with that, all that being said, thank you all for tuning in once again, and have a fantastic day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.